Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the C.I.C. Lounge. I'm Peter.
I'm Jen.
And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode of Lower Decks, Season 4, Episode 9.
The Inner Fight.
Yes. And obviously this is Beckett's inner fight. We've been seeing her this entire season struggling with her inner turmoils, and we finally have figured out why she's been struggling this entire time and why she's been trying to keep herself at an ensign.
Right. So I looked it up. Lower Decks is supposed to take place like right after Nemesis.
Ugh.
Yeah. So it's after Voyager has returned from the Delta Quadrant, but it's like before the events of Star Trek Picard.
Okay.
So it's closely after the end of Next Generation because they did the 4 movies. So in this episode, Beckett's character comes to reveal that she admired this young woman at the academy called C.I.C. C.I.C. was one of the 5 pilots involved in the Culvered Starburst maneuver in the episode The First Duty of Star Trek The Next Generation, in which one of those 5 pilots dies when they misperform the stunt that's illegal. And the 4 subsequent pilots are then not put on trial, but there's a hearing. And this is an episode where I have heard that they'll show this episode at like the Naval Academy and stuff like that because it has to do with honor and integrity, and the first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth, and so Wesley Crusher is not the senior pilot in this trial or investigation. The squadron leader is Nicholas Locarno, played by Robert Duncan McNeil, who plays Tom Paris, Tom Paris is basically the Nicholas Locarno character with a different name.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's the exact same character. So C.I.C. was one of those 4 pilots. And, Wesley and the other, Wesley comes forward, tells the truth about what they were doing, that they thought they could get away with it. They thought they could do anything, and their friend died. Nick Locarno is ousted from the academy, and Nick Locarno is referenced and actually makes an appearance at the end of this episode. So I thought that was kind of cool that they're referencing these 2 characters that were in this episode. But a lot
Plot thickens.
It does, but a lot of people, like at first glance, the character of C.I.C. in The First Duty is very limited. She doesn't have a big part. She's just one of the others. It's basically Wesley Crusher's storyline. C.I.C. gets a bigger part in the Next Generation episode Lower Decks. The Next Gen episode Lower Decks, which centers around 4 junior officers aboard the Enterprise, where C.I.C. is then tapped to go on a mission with Picard, kind of an espionage mission, and she is subsequently captured and killed in through the course of the episode, and she dies. So what we learn in this episode of Lower Decks, Star Trek Lower Decks, is that Mariner had admired C.I.C., that she'd gone through all of this at the academy, she overcame, she graduated in spite of the shame that she had to endure from this piloting accident. Yeah. And then she goes on to serve aboard the Enterprise. But then, of course, since she died never having advanced in rank. She died as a junior officer. And if that's good enough for C.I.C., it's good enough for Beckett. So I thought that was kind of a nice nod to that kind of storyline. Beckett's character obviously is younger than C.I.C., being that, so I'm not sure how much younger.
I would venture a guess that they're not too different in age, because Beckett does say that they were really close friends. Right,
but given the timeline of events and that Beckett's a junior officer now, several years after Next Gen ended, C.I.C. would have had to have been a senior classman at the very least.
Yeah.
When
Beckett first joins.
When Beckett first joins, right.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I found this episode very almost moving. It was definitely a deeper episode than we've seen so far. I mean, aside from the episode where they go to Ferenginar.
Right.
it's definitely, we were shown a lot of Beckett's demons,
Yeah.
where her friends are trying to keep her safe and she's just constantly running out into danger. I mean, the B story, the side story to this episode was definitely silly and chock full of antics with the captain and Rutherford on the planet trying to get the
Trying to get information
information
on the location of Nicholas Locarno.
on on Locarno. But Mariner definitely had her moment, and I've enjoyed how Beckett doesn't take any advice or anything from her friends, from the people closest to her, because she tries to keep them at arm's length
Yes.
because of what happened to her friend, Cito.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever she gets these words of wisdoms, or words of wisdom, and these little nuggets of clarity in her brain, it's from the most unlikely people. I mean, she gets this huge aha moment from a Ferengi,
Right.
and then she has an even bigger like coming to Jesus moment with a Klingon of all people.
Yeah. And I think some people are like that. Like you can have the people closest to you telling you something over and over again and you don't hear it, you don't see it, or you don't want to hear it or see it. But when a total stranger who has no vested interest in you
Calls out your bullshit.
calls you on your shit.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. All right. So
I did like how she gave him a big old hug, and he's like,
that
"Get
was-
away from me! What are you doing?"
That was brilliant. That was
I'm
brilliant.
hugging you, big idiot. And then she booped him. She booped him on the nose. That probably was my favorite part of the whole episode.
Yeah.
It was the nose boop on a Klingon.
I think it was kind of interesting. She by the end of the episode, she's basically acting like Starfleet, like the
Yeah.
Federation, trying to get everybody to work together because we have a common enemy, a common goal to, want to
We
get
should
off.
fight them. Nope, we're gonna do something even harder. Time out, guys. We're gonna talk.
Right? So I think that's a really good example of what Beckett can do.
Yeah.
What we've always known she can do. And
Yeah.
I was grateful that it seems like they're not going to drag this out any longer now. Because we talked about this earlier in the season, that she's kind of the wash, rinse, repeat on this, insubordination kick, when she kind of going to grow up, and it sounds like that's the direction they're moving. And I'm happy to see that.
Me too. I'm very happy. They've all advanced in rank, and she's trying to stick to it, but it's been driving her nuts. And now she's kind of had that aha moment, and now I think that we're actually going to see her strive to become a captain, like she did, like she said
Like
she
she wanted
originally
to,
wanted to.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed. I mean, I don't know how many more seasons of this show they're going to do, but we might end the series with her getting an actual ship.
I don't know. I'm
Not this season,
not
obviously.
not this season. I have heard there's a season 5 beyond that.
No word.
Too much has gone on with the writer strike, with the actor strike. There's so much uncertainty. And who knows once these strikes are over where the not just the networks, but where these streaming platforms are going to end.
Yeah.
Like I just got an email from Netflix that, my streaming rates are going up.
Ugh.
Like you haven't been paying anybody anything. Your actors haven't even settled on a contract and you're already raising your rates. Like,
Yeah.
fuck you guys.
Well, those CEOs, they need new Bentleys, and
Well, I mean, they need to keep that gross margin between what they earn and what the next rung
yeah,
earns. Like,
that 346% wage gap.
right? Yeah, they need to maintain that.
Yeah.
Like,
Because, all of us, we definitely can't afford to live on the pennies that they pay us.
right. Anyway, not in the Star Trek utopian, pseudo utopian society we allegedly, or that Star Trek takes place in. So
Yeah.
their money works very differently. I'm not really sure how the Federation functions without some kind of exchange.
They have to mine, like, some sort of latinum, right? Like,
They
have to have some sort of currency.
Well, they're like, you get the impression that non-Federation worlds have currency. Obviously,
Yeah.
the Ferengi, it's their bread and butter. But the Federation, I think they've been deliberately vague because I think the writers haven't figured that out. Like, how does this work? Like,
Well, I mean,
it's like, is it everything is truly free because everybody gives freely of what they have? Like, I don't know.
well, Next Generation, they kept, pushing forward the concept that they don't have currency and all that jazz. And, they have the replicators. So I guess that takes away the need to have to make and sell and buy and
To an
material
extent,
to an
yeah,
extent. But
and because the society you presume has a lot of automation
yeah,
that you probably don't need much to maintain that because you have systems that can maintain the systems.
yeah. But you
So
still have to send somebody out to oversee the mining equipment, and that can't be the most glamorous of jobs.
it can't, but holograms could do it. AIs could do it.
Yeah, but then there was the holographic uprising or whatever,
Right.
wasn't there?
We're digressing.
I know we are very much falling down a rabbit hole here. I did like that when Beckett and the Klingon were talking, she was complaining about how Starfleet was becoming more and more militarized, and we've hit on this several
Oh yeah.
times with Starfleet, and she said that Starfleet was supposed to be puzzling together the mysteries of life, not fighting wars. And I really enjoyed that because that kind of brings back what Starfleet was always meant to be.
Yes. And like I know in Discovery was originally written to be more of a war concept.
Yeah.
And episodes with space battles or conflict or physical aggressive conflict are very compelling.
Mm-hmm.
We like war stories. We ravage stories from World War II.
Oh yeah, we're a violent species.
We could give two shits about what happens in peacetime because it's boring.
Yeah.
Because nothing happens because it's not that exciting. If you look at the news and media in general, like it super saturates all the exciting bits, the dangerous bits that are taking place in the world, even though the world has never been more at peace. In today's age, relative to the span of human history, this is one of the most peaceful times we've ever lived in. Certainly doesn't feel that way.
No.
Not the way the world is painted. But there's a tremendous amount of good. There's a tremendous amount of peace and tranquility in the world, in the nation, everywhere. But that's not newsworthy.
No.
That's not going to make you tune in. You want the salaciousness. You want grit. You don't want to experience it yourself, but you want to
watch it or
read it or feel like it without actually being there, without actually being in danger. That is the nature of storytelling.
Yeah.
And Gene Roddenberry, his vision for this utopian society and for Starfleet, being the puzzlers, that's great. But when you look at what like Tindy and Rutherford talk about, how excited they get over stuff growing in a cave, and the rest of us are like, where's the monster?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about the stuff growing in the cave. I want to see the monster. I want to see the danger. I want to see excitement. And 99% of what Starfleet does is routine scans and surveys and boring stuff. And you can't build a show around, and this week we're in this nebula studying these stellar gases.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. But here, watch us go to Tin Forward, drink some drinks.
Well, doesn't the Klingon, after their conversation and her aha moment, doesn't he sit there and go, now you can go back to studying your, what, plants? Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. Yes. So yeah, modern Star Trek, has gravitated away from a lot of that utopian stuff because that's not interesting storytelling.
Yeah.
And we want to be engaged. And it doesn't have to be all war and doom and gloom. I mean, we want a happy ending. We don't want to linger in the happy ending.
Yeah.
So,
well, going back to the broader story for this season,
yes.
We finally find out who has been piloting this mystery ship. And I was wrong. It's not somebody from the future. It's Locarno.
Nicholas
Or
Locarno.
Locarno, excuse me.
Yeah. I mean, it was a cliffhanger episode, so it kind of left us with that. Like,
Yeah.
all right. I was really excited, that Robbie McNeil came back to voice Nick Locarno. That Lower Decks is going to tell us what happened to Nick Locarno, because there's a lot of fans who just like, well, I just assumed Tom Paris and Nick Locarno were the same person because they're the same character.
Yeah.
They're written exactly the same. And when Tom Paris talks about his backstory in Voyager, it sounds awfully lot like Nicholas Locarno's backstory. He's kind of vague on the details, but I'm like, I never understood why they just didn't make him Nick Locarno. Probably some copyright or
Probably
ownership issue. I don't know, but yeah, I'm excited to see what they do with that.
I loved when Mariner gets beamed up off the planet, and it makes me wonder. Sorry, I digress a little bit, but are the Klingons? Is this specific bird of prey? These Klingons working with Locarno?
Is Locarno working for someone? Like, what's the there's a lot of puzzling, and they haven't really dropped enough information for us to really even.
I mean, he sits there at the very end. He goes, "We're going to get into some trouble. We're going to cause some trouble."
Okay.
Why?
Well, the thing with Nick Locarno, like his character in the first duty, he was a stud, a rock star. They were Nova Squadron. They were the top elite flying squadron in the academy, and you kind of strut your stuff around campus when you're the big man, and that's and he was that leader, and he wasn't necessarily bad at leadership. Like he was very charismatic, and his fellow pilots were willing to do anything.
Yeah.
They believed in him, and he, for the most part, was a pretty decent guy, and he looked out for them. And when the shit hit the fan, and one of the pilots died, he kept that group together, and he said, "We're going to stick to this story." Now, it wasn't the truth, so okay, some moral questions there, but he was determined to keep them together. And when it was clear that Wesley wasn't going to keep silent, Nick stood up. And he pleaded with that board so that his other pilots could continue their education at the academy, so that he would take all the responsibility. So in the end of that episode, Nick stood up and did the right thing.
Yeah.
Because of Wesley's encouragement. Of course, Wesley's the main character that we're familiar with, so this wasn't about Nick Locarno. So it's interesting, okay, so Locarno's flushed out of the academy, and he has to live with the shame and the guilt of what he's done. So who knows what a character like that has gotten into in the time since.
And he's not stupid, so...
Oh, no.
He's been plotting something.
He's been working with someone who has been. So there's not a whole lot of information to go on. So I'm kind of excited to see next week's episode, to see where they take us.
Me too. I found it very entertaining when Beckett wakes up, though, after Locarno beams her to his ship. And what in the minimalist hell? Like, literally the only thing in the room is a cactus in a little glass bowl.
Yes. I'm sure there's a significance there.
Yeah, I hope so.
May not.
They've been really good about, incorporating meaning to almost everything that you see.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing of it is that, like, if it's Next Gen, if it's Deep Space Nine, or if it's Voyager, I'm gonna pick up on it.
Oh yeah.
If it's original series, and particularly if it's animated, the animated series, I never saw the animated series, so
I don't think very many people have.
So I think the Valdorians from was it last week? I think those aliens, the cave aliens.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think those were a drawback to an animated series character. So alien species. So I'm like, yeah, that went over my head.
Yeah.
But all the other stuff, like I picked that stuff up pretty quick, and so I was really excited when I was watching this. To understand, she says Cedo, and I'm like, I know exactly who that character is. I know exactly what happened in that sequence.
I knew that there was something deeper with that name. I didn't recognize the name personally, but I knew there was something deeper because the show doesn't just throw in random stuff like that.
No, it doesn't.
And if it does, it ends up being something significant later in the season or in the series. So I'm glad that you
Oh, absolutely.
knew.
Absolutely. So, yeah, rewatch The First Duty and then Lower Decks, the 2 Next Generation episodes. And this episode will have just that much more impact.
I'll have to go do that.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Well, it was a 2-part episode, and we haven't seen part 2,
Yeah.
so we'll have more next week.
So tune in next week when we dive even deeper into this 2-parter when we see the last part and the season finale.
Yep.
And then we're going to have to find something else to do, Jen.
We'll figure it out.
I don't know. I'll be lost.
We'll find something to talk about.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the CIC Lounge. I'm Peter.
I'm Jen.
We'll see you next time.